My name is Everett Cole. I'm 41 years old, and until last September, I thought I understood what life meant. I didn't. On the morning of September 14th, I was alive. By the afternoon, I wasn't. I live in a small town in northern Montana, the kind of place where the grocery store closes at 7 p.m. and the high school football game is the highlight of the week. I run a small furniture restoration shop on Main Street. I love the smell of old wood and lemon oil, the way sanding down something broken can reveal its hidden beauty. My wife, Maren, is the most patient human I've ever met. We've been married for 13 years and somehow she still laughs at my bad puns. Our son, Caleb, is 9, and he's got this shock of unruly red hair that sticks up like he's always mid-laugh. He's the reason I started slowing down on work. I didn't want to miss him growing up. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We had bills that seemed to breed when we weren't looking. I worried about keeping the shop afloat, whether I was giving Caleb the right kind of advice, and if the draft in our old house would ever get fixed. I grilled steaks on Sundays. I coached Caleb's little league team. I believed in God, the way a lot of people do, quietly from the back pew at Christmas Eve service. I had a few tattoos. Nothing wild, just markers along the road. The first was a faded compass on my forearm I got at 21, after a road trip down Route 66 with friends. A pair of oak leaves on my shoulder for my grandmother who used to take me hiking through the Bitterroot Mountains. And Caleb's birthday in Roman numerals, inked over my ribs, where it hurt the most but felt the most right. That September day, the air had that crisp edge that lets you know summer's gone. Maren had taken Caleb to the county fair to see the livestock competition. I stayed behind, planning to move a few heavy cabinets for a client. My shop radio was playing an old Creedence Clearwater Revival song, Something About the River, when it happened. It wasn't dramatic at first. Just a tightening in my chest like someone cinched a belt one notch too far. I remember thinking I should sit down and then the floor just came up to meet me. No gasp, no cry. Just the sound of my head hitting the oak planks and the faint smell of sawdust. My last thought was embarrassingly small. Did I lock the back door of the shop? And then, nothing. Not darkness, not light. Just a vast, unmeasured quiet. The kind you don't realize you've been missing your whole life until you're in it. The pain vanished. The worry vanished. It was as if my very weight had been set down somewhere and I was free to float. And that's when I saw me. I don't know how long I floated there, staring at the body that used to be mine. It was strange, but not in the way you'd think. No panic. No horror. Just curiosity, like I was looking at an old photograph of myself and realizing I didn't quite remember being that person. I was lying on the shop floor, one arm tucked under me at an awkward angle, sawdust dusting my hair. The radio was still playing Creedence, Rolling on the River, and the smell of varnish hung in the air. My chest wasn't rising. My skin had already gone pale, almost waxy. And then I noticed it, a pull. Not a violent tug, but a steady current, like the slow push of a river you didn't know you were standing in. I felt myself drifting upward, through the rafters of my shop, past the tin roof, right through it like it wasn't there. The world spread out beneath me, the narrow two-lane road cutting through town, the Sinclair gas station, the feed store with its faded red sign, the fields rolling away toward the mountains. I could see the county fairgrounds in the distance, Ferris wheel turning lazily, little pinpricks of movement that were people. Somewhere down there, Maren and Caleb were walking, living in a moment that didn't yet include the news that I was gone. I wasn't hot. I wasn't cold. I wasn't anything I'd ever been before. I simply was. Then came the sound. Not in my ears, deeper than that. A low, resonant hum, like the vibration of the earth itself, but purer. It filled me as if my very being was made of that note. I realized the current pulling me upward was following the sound. The sky above me darkened, not with clouds but into something velvety and endless. The familiar blue faded into a depth I couldn't measure, and in the middle of that darkness, a light. At first, it was just a pinprick, the way a single star might look on a winter night in Montana. But it grew. It grew without blinding, becoming warmer, more alive. I couldn't tell if I was moving toward it or if it was rushing toward me, maybe both. And with each heartbeat, if I even had one anymore, something deep in me recognized it. It was like catching a scent from childhood, a smell you haven't thought of in decades, and suddenly remembering a place you'd loved and lost. Only this wasn't a place. It was love. Not the kind we use that word for down here, not romance, not friendship, not even the love of a parent. This was the original version of love, the one all the others are only poor copies of. By the time the light reached me, I wasn't sure if I still had edges. I felt dissolved into it. I didn't want to move. I didn't want anything. And then, The light began to take shape. The light shifted, gathering into something more defined. It wasn't like watching fog turn into a shape. It was more like recognizing someone in a crowd before you've even seen their face. It was a man, though calling him that felt too small. His form was human, but it was made entirely of that living light, every part of him pulsing with warmth and life. His clothes shimmered like they were woven from threads of the night sky itself. And his face, I couldn't describe it with lines or features. It was like looking at the sun and seeing every moment you'd ever been happy, every person who'd ever truly loved you, all in one instant. But it was his eyes that undid me. They weren't a color I could name. They were pools of joy so deep it hurt to look at them, and beneath that joy an ancient sadness, not bitterness, but the sorrow of someone who's seen every heartbreak in history and still chooses to love. When those eyes met mine, I felt stripped bare. He knew every thought I'd ever had, every good thing, every cruel thing, every regret I'd shoved into the corners of my mind. And yet, somehow, I felt celebrated. Like he was glad I existed, no matter how messy the details of my life were. I didn't need an introduction. My soul already knew. Jesus. His voice didn't come through my ears. It arrived in my mind, but warmer than any sound, layered with the memory of my father's voice, my mother's laughter, and something older than the mountains. Welcome, Everett, he said. I've been waiting for you. The moment he spoke, the last traces of fear inside me fell away. My first reaction wasn't awe or joy, it was shame. All the Sundays I'd skipped church for a fishing trip, every time I'd used his name as a throwaway word, every time I'd chosen my own comfort over helping someone else, they all crashed over me. But he didn't let me stay there. It's finished, he said, and the words didn't just land in my mind, they washed through me like warm water, scrubbing away guilt I'd carried for decades. And then he gestured for me to look at myself. I glanced down and I was made of light too, but dimmer than his, like a candle compared to the sun. My skin, if you could call it that, was smooth, unmarked. The tattoos I'd carried all my adult life, gone. The compass, the oak leaves, Caleb's birthday, every single one. I looked back at him, confused. He knew the question before I formed it. The marks you carried in life were part of your story there, he said. But they are not the story of who you truly are. And then he began to show me. It began with a shift, like the light around us folded in on itself and suddenly we were somewhere else. A small tattoo studio. The buzz of the needle was sharp, the air heavy with antiseptic. A young man sat in the chair, maybe 19, wiry and tense. He was getting a coiled rattlesnake inked across his forearm, its mouth open in a permanent strike. His jaw was set, but under that hardness I could feel it, anger. Rage so deep it didn't fit in his body anymore, spilling out into the ink. Jesus touched my shoulder and the scene changed. I wasn't looking with human eyes anymore. I could see threats. Fine, smoky strands weaving out from the snake as the needle worked. They weren't physical, they connected straight into the young man's spirit. This isn't a demon, Jesus said, his voice carrying both sadness and certainty. It is a place. An open door. He has marked his own temple with the story of his anger, and now that anger has a home to live in. It will whisper to him when he is weak, feeding itself until he no longer remembers life without it. I watched years flash forward, shouting matches in traffic, broken friendships, a marriage ending in slammed doors and silence. All of it, in some way, traced back to that thread anchored in his skin. The scene folded again. Now we were in a bright, clean parlor. A woman in her 40s sat with her wrist extended, watching an artist ink delicate script, always with me, along with the dates of her sister's life. Her face was calm, but her heart was wrapped in grief. It pulsed through her like a second heartbeat. This is love, Jesus said, but it is love chained to loss. And I saw it. The ink on her wrist was like a tether leading straight to a gravesite. It kept the soil fresh in her mind, never letting the grass grow over her grief. She remembers her sister's life, he continued, but each time her eyes fall on this mark, she relives the moment of death. It slows her healing because she has carved her wound into her own skin. The light folded again. This time, a young man in his 20s, smiling wide, showing the artist a sketch of a cross with flames around it. He was proud, talking about how this would show the world his devotion to Christ. I almost smiled, until I saw Jesus' face. There was no anger in him, only a gentle, aching pity. My child, he said, do they think the mark on their skin is greater than the one on their heart? This is meant to be a sign of humility, but it will become a badge of pride. The enemy will whisper, look at your great sacrifice. Look at your great devotion. And pride will grow where humility should have been. I saw it. church picnics where he rolled up his sleeve, moments where he silently compared himself to others without such marks. The cross had become a trophy, not a testimony. And then the light began to turn inward. I knew the next story would be mine. The light shifted again, but this time it didn't open into someone else's life. It opened into mine. I was 21, standing outside a dusty little shop in Santa Fe, grinning like I'd just pulled one over on the world. My first tattoo, the compass, fresh on my arm. Jesus let me feel the exact cocktail of emotions I'd had that day, the thrill of rebellion, the quiet hope that people would see me as adventurous, different. And then he showed me the thread, faint, almost invisible, but there. It wasn't evil, just tethered to my pride, my need to be seen a certain way. And that thread had been humming in the background of my life for 20 years, feeding moments when I chose appearance over honesty. The scene shifted. The oak leaves on my shoulder, I'd gotten them the summer after my grandmother died. I thought of it as honoring her. But as he showed me the thread, I saw it wasn't just about her life, it was also about my refusal to let her go. A part of me had been living at her graveside all this time, even while I was laughing with my family or working in my shop. And then, the one that hit the deepest, Caleb's birthday in Roman numerals, carved along my ribs. "You love your son," Jesus said, and the love in his voice made my knees weak. "That is good. But your heart has only one throne, and I made it for myself. By placing his name here, you declared him the guardian of that space. But only I can guard your heart without breaking it." The thread from this mark was different, not dark, not heavy, but binding all the same. It was tied to my fear. The fear of losing him. The fear that love could be taken away at any moment. I realized how often I'd made choices from that fear instead of from trust. Tears blurred my vision, though I no longer had eyes in the way I once did. "It's not about the ink," he said. "It's about the spirit. You were made to be free, Everett." Every mark made in anger, in grief, in misplaced devotion. Each one ties the eternal to something temporary. My story for you is not written in ink, but in the blood I shed. That is the only mark you will ever need. I wanted to tell him I understood, but the words wouldn't come. My whole being was trembling, from the weight of his truth and from the love behind it. Then his voice softened. "Your work is not finished here." The words hit me like a cold wind. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Please, don't send me back. I want to stay here." "You will never be without me," he said, laying a hand, if light can be called a hand, on my shoulder. "But Maren and Caleb need you. Your story with them isn't over. Go and love them with the love you've been given here. Go and tell what you've seen, not with judgment but with the freedom you've found." Before I could answer, the current began to pull me backward. The light faded into darkness. And then, the falling began. The falling was violent. The peace, the weightlessness, gone in an instant. My whole being felt like it was being shoved back into a box that was too small, too sharp. A lightning bolt of pain tore through my chest. My lungs seized and I sucked in a breath so ragged it felt like sandpaper. Voices, loud and urgent, crashed into me. "We've got him." Pulses back. My eyes fluttered open to a blinding white ceiling. Figures in navy uniforms hovered over me. An oxygen mask pressed hard against my face. The air tasted like plastic and hospital antiseptic. I turned my head just enough to see Maren. Her hair was a mess, her cheeks streaked with tears. She had her phone in one hand like it had been welded there, probably from calling 911 over and over. When our eyes met, relief broke across her face like sunrise over the mountains. Later, they told her I'd been clinically dead for just over 7 minutes. No pulse. No breath. By every rule of medicine, I should have been brain damaged, or gone completely. But I was fine. My heart had taken a hit, but my mind was clearer than it had ever been. I tried telling the ER doctor about the light, about Jesus, about the threats. He smiled politely, scribbled something on his chart, and called it a hypoxic hallucination. Maybe that's easier to believe. But I know. It's been 8 months now. I still have my tattoos. They're still inked into my skin, but I can't look at them the same way. I don't see art or memories anymore. I see anchors. I see old versions of myself that Jesus untied. I'm not here to tell anyone to laser theirs off. That's not what he sent me back for. He told me to talk about freedom. So that's what I do. If you're listening to this, just take a look at the marks you carry. On your skin, in your habits, in your heart. Ask yourself, what story is this telling? Was it born in anger? In grief? In pride? Even if it came from love, is it love that frees or love that chains? You don't need to fix it before you talk to him. Bring it to him exactly as it is. Say, "Jesus, here's the mark. Here's the story. If it's tying me to something I don't need anymore, cut the thread. The only mark that matters is the one he writes on your heart, unseen by the world but strong enough to set you free. I know because I've felt it. I've seen the one who makes it. And that moment in the light, it's the most alive I've ever been.